The silence between stars had lasted longer than most civilizations could remember. In a region of space called the Scar, two massive armadas floated among the wreckage of 10,000 previous battles. The Ascendancy brought 40,000 warships built from living silicon that pulsed with inner light. The collective matched them with 35,000 vessels made of crystalline formations that sang when they moved. Both sides had been fighting for 700,000 years. Neither could remember why the war started anymore. Commander Ralph stood in his war chamber watching the enemy positions. His species aged slowly, and he had commanded fleets for 6,000 years. Every day brought new battles, and every night brought counts of the dead. The numbers no longer meant anything to him. Millions died and millions more took their place. This particular battle had dragged on for 6 months already with no end in sight. Across the void, Admiral Fren reviewed tactical displays showing Ascendancy positions. Her crystalline body refracted light into rainbow patterns when she moved. She had fought Ralph personally 3 times over the centuries, and both had scars to prove it. Today would bring another clash, and tomorrow another after that. The war was eternal, and both sides accepted this as simple truth. Then something changed. A sensor operator on one of the Ascendancy cruisers noticed an anomaly. A ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the battlefield. It was small compared to the massive dreadnoughts that dominated both fleets. Only 800 meters long and oddly shaped with smooth curves instead of aggressive angles. The design was unfamiliar. Neither fleet recognized the configuration or the energy signatures coming from its engines. Ralph studied the readings with mild curiosity. Some minor species wandering into the wrong neighborhood perhaps. They would be destroyed by stray weapons fire within the hour if they did not flee. He started to dismiss it when the unknown vessel did something unexpected. It positioned itself directly between both armadas in the absolute center of no man's space, where nothing survived for long. The ship broadcast on every known frequency. The voice was calm and measured. "This is Captain Reeves of the human vessel Determination. We are here to talk." Ralph blinked slowly. Humans. He accessed the database but found nothing. Unknown species. From some backwater system, probably. The captain continued speaking. "You have 50 minutes to cease hostilities and open negotiations, or we will end this conflict ourselves." Laughter rippled through the Ascendancy command staff. Ralph felt amusement for the first time in months. One tiny ship threatening 2 of the galaxy's most powerful empires. The audacity was almost refreshing. He opened a channel to the collective. "Fren, are you seeing this?" Her response came quickly. "Unknown species, scanning now. Their power signatures make no sense. The readings are unlike anything in our databases." Ralph dismissed her concern. Sensor ghosts happened all the time in the Scar, too much interference from old weapons and radiation. He studied the human vessel more carefully. It just floated there without shields raised or weapons charged, defenseless, foolish. He made a decision. "Send the cruiser Windcutter, remove this pest from our battlefield. Try not to destroy them completely. I want prisoners to question about where they came from." The Windcutter was 3 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. It moved toward the Determination like a predator approaching wounded prey. The human ship did not react. No evasive maneuvers, no defensive postures, nothing. The cruiser's captain opened fire with a particle beam weapon that could vaporize steel in microseconds. The golden beam crossed the distance and struck the Determination dead center. Both fleets watched, expecting to see the human vessel disintegrate in a cloud of superheated gas. Instead, the beam simply stopped at the hull. No explosion, no shield flare. The energy just vanished as if the ship absorbed it completely. Every tactical officer in both armadas sat up straighter. That should not be possible. Energy had to go somewhere. Nothing just absorbed particle beams like that. The human captain spoke again, and this time his voice carried disappointment rather than anger. "Your weapon has been analyzed and archived. I asked you not to do that." Ralph felt the first twinge of concern. Something was wrong here. Ships that could absorb particle beams without shields did not exist. The laws of physics did not allow it. Reeves continued speaking. "Lieutenant Hayes, show them option 3, please." The Determination's hull began glowing with soft blue light that grew brighter with each passing second. Then a single beam lanced. Out from the human ship, it was impossibly thin, barely visible against the black of space. The beam touched the windcutter's bow, and the 3-kilometer cruiser simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field, no escape pods. 4,000 crew members vanished in less than a second as if they had never been there at all. Complete silence fell across both fleets. Ralph stared at the empty space where his cruiser had been. His mind refused to accept what his eyes had seen. Molecular disassembly on that scale required power outputs that would drain a sun. Yet the human ship showed no sign of energy depletion. Its power levels remained steady and constant. Reeves spoke into the shocked silence. That was not an attack, that was a demonstration. Humanity spent 200 years in isolation after discovering faster-than-light travel. We watched you destroy each other and hoped you would make peace on your own. You have not. Your weapons are based on principles we abandoned 50 years ago as too crude. We do not want to hurt anyone else. Please, just talk to each other. Ralph felt rage building in his chest. This unknown species dared to lecture him, to call his civilization crude. He had fought for 6,000 years. He had commanded fleets that numbered in the millions. He would not be dismissed by upstart primitives who thought one fancy weapon made them superior. He opened fleet-wide communications. All ships fire on that vessel, destroy it completely. Friend saw opportunity in chaos. If the Ascendancy wasted firepower on the human ship, she could strike their exposed flanks. She gave the same order to her fleet. 75,000 warships turned their weapons toward one small vessel and unleashed everything they had. The combined firepower could have shattered planets. Space itself seemed to burn white with released energy. The bombardment continued for 2 full minutes. Every weapon type in the galactic arsenal hammered against the Determination. When the light finally faded, both fleets expected to see nothing remaining. Instead, the human ship floated exactly where it had been. Not a scratch, not a dent, not even scorch marks on the hull. A calm voice came over the communications. Shields holding at 100%, no penetration detected. Coffee in the mess hall is still hot. Reeves sighed deeply, and the sound carried sadness more than anger. You were warned. Haze implement. Containment protocol. The Determination released a pulse of energy that expanded at the speed of light. It washed over every ship in both fleets simultaneously. Weapon systems across 75,000 vessels went dark. Engines still functioned. Life support remained active. But every gun, missile launcher, energy cannon, and kinetic weapon simply stopped responding to commands. Panic spread through both armadas as crews realized they were helpless. Ralph frantically tried to restart his weapons, but nothing worked. Fren experienced the same helplessness. They were floating targets now. Reeves spoke one more time. Your weapons are offline temporarily. They will return in 48 hours. Until then, you cannot hurt each other, so you might as well talk. We have transmitted coordinates for a meeting station. Our construction drones will have it built in 6 hours. You have 43 minutes to decide if you will use it, or if we need to take further steps. Ralph sat in stunned silence. One ship had disabled his entire fleet without destroying a single vessel. The power required for such action exceeded anything he thought possible. Slowly, reluctantly, he opened a direct channel to Fren. They had not spoken in 3,000 years. Her face appeared on his screen, and she looked as shaken as he felt. Neither knew what to say. The universe had just changed, and neither understood the rules anymore. Before either could speak, new sensor alerts screamed warnings. 5,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the battlefield. Ralph recognized the signatures immediately. The Remnant. Pirates and scavengers made up of species displaced by the war. They saw 2 helpless fleets an opportunity for revenge. Their leader broadcast on all channels. 700,000 years you hunted us. Now you are defenseless, and we will make you suffer. Warlord Grimm commanded the remnant fleet from a ship built from scavenged parts of 100 different vessels. His species had no homeworld anymore. The Ascendancy had destroyed it 12,000 years ago during a territorial expansion. He had spent 40 years fighting, hiding, and stealing just to survive. Now he saw the 2 ancient empires floating helpless, and rage filled every part of his being. The remnant ships accelerated toward both fleets with weapons charging. 5,000 vessels against 75,000 should have been suicide. But 75,000 ships with no working weapons were just targets. Grim opened communications to Ralph and Fren. You turned our worlds to ash, you enslaved our ancestors, you hunted us through the void for millennia. Now you will know what it feels like to be helpless. Ralph tried desperately to restore weapons, but the systems remained dead. He contacted the Determination. Pride made the words difficult, but survival mattered more. Human Captain, if you have any mercy, help us. The remnant will slaughter millions. Fren added her voice, though it clearly pained her. We surrender to your authority. Please do not let them massacre helpless crews. Reeves responded immediately, and his voice carried genuine sadness. Warlord Grim, stand down immediately. This is your only warning. Grim laughed harshly. One small ship threatens me. I am 5,000 strong. Get out of my way or die with them. Reeves closed his eyes briefly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. You are angry. I understand why, but attacking helpless ships is not justice. It is murder. Grim felt no sympathy. Then stop me, human. Reeves gave orders to his crew. Position us between the fleets and the remnant. Haze, active defense only. I want 0 remnant casualties if possible. The Determination moved faster than physics should allow. It crossed 50,000 kilometers in 2 seconds and placed itself as a shield in front of the helpless armadas. The remnant fleet opened fire with everything they had. Missiles, energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, and exotic radiation all converged on the single human vessel. The Determination deployed something new. A field that created perfect mirror images appeared around the ship. Every weapon fired at it was reflected back at exactly half power. Remnant ships suddenly found themselves under attack from their own weapons. In 30 seconds, 400 vessels were crippled by their own firepower. Missiles detonated against the ships that launched them. Energy beams carved through the hulls they had originated from. Kinetic rounds punched holes in their own gun batteries. Grim watched in horror as his fleet destroyed itself. He screamed orders to cease fire, and his captains obeyed immediately. Reeves opened a channel directly to Grim. I have read your history. The Ascendancy destroyed your homeworld 12,000 years ago. The Collective enslaved your ancestors for 8,000 years before that. You have every right to be angry, but this is not the way. Grim felt tears burning his eyes. Easy for you to say from your untouchable ship. They took everything from us, everything. The human captain spoke gently now. I know. We have been watching this war for 200 years. We documented every atrocity committed by both sides, every war crime, every species pushed to extinction. We have testimony from 2,000 civilizations. We know what was done to you and your people. Grim felt something break inside his chest. Someone finally acknowledged the pain. Someone finally understood. Reeves continued speaking. Humanity is offering asylum. We have prepared 12 worlds in our space for displaced species. Good worlds with resources and safety. 3 exist in the perfect habitable zones. No strings attached. You can settle there and rebuild your lives without fear. Or you can stay here and die today, because if you attack those helpless ships, I will stop you and you will not survive it. Grim struggled to process the offer. Why would you do this? We mean nothing to you. We are just pirates and scavengers. Reeves responded immediately. 300 years ago, humanity almost destroyed itself in nuclear fire. Billions died before we learned to choose mercy over vengeance. We will not watch you make the same mistake we did. Long silence filled the communication channel. Grim looked at his scarred hands and thought about 40 years of running. His second in command, a female officer named Petra, whose species went extinct a century ago, spoke up quietly. Grim, I am tired. We are all tired. Maybe it is time to stop running and start living. Other voices from the remnant fleet joined in agreement. Grim finally responded with his voice shaking. These worlds you mentioned, they are really ours, no tricks or traps, Reeves answered firmly. You have my word, we will even help transport you there safely. Grim made his decision. All ships stand down, power down weapons and engines. We accept the human offer. The remnant fleet went dark and began drifting away from the battle zone. Reeves addressed both Ralph and Fren again. 38 minutes remain. The meeting station is complete and waiting. Your weapons are still offline. The remnant is withdrawing. You now have a choice. Sit here in hostile silence for 48 hours or go to that station and talk. Ralph asked the question that had been burning in his mind. And if we refuse, will you destroy us too? The human captain shook his head. No, but we will quarantine your civilizations until you evolve past this. We will place a barrier around both your territories. Nothing gets in and nothing gets out. You can fight each other for another 1,000,000 years if you want, but you will do it alone, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The threat was clear and terrifying. Isolation meant stagnation and eventual extinction. Friend spoke for the first time directly to Reeves. 700,000 years. Do you have any idea how many have died in this war? The human's voice was heavy with sorrow. Our artificial intelligence calculated it. 42 trillion sentient beings across both sides. That is why we are here. That number does not get any bigger. Not today. Ralph felt anger rising. You come here with your advanced technology and expect us to just forget 700,000 years of history, Reeves replied calmly. No, I expect you to remember every death so it never happens again. But I also expect you to be better than your anger. I expect you to choose the future over the past. Both commanders sat in their respective war chambers considering impossible choices. Pride fought against survival. Hatred battled with exhaustion. Before either could respond, alarms screamed across all ships simultaneously. Science Officer Park aboard the Determination reported urgently. Captain, detecting massive energy surge from the center of the scar. Something is emerging. It is huge, 50 kilometers across. On every view screen, an ancient structure rose from the debris field where it had been hidden for millennia. The architecture was unlike anything any species recognized. It was older than the war itself, older than both empires. Energy readings climbed off every scale as the structure powered up after eons of dormancy. Ralph whispered in shock. The forge! The ancient stories were true. Friend's voice shook with fear. Impossible! The forge of the first ones was supposed to be a myth. The structure's weapon ports opened, revealing dozens of massive emplacements, each capable of destroying planets. Targeting systems activated and locked onto every ship in both fleets, including the Determination. An ancient voice broadcast on all frequencies. The sound was vast and terrible, like the death of stars. War detected, scanning duration, 700,000 years of continuous conflict confirmed, analyzing casualties, 42 trillion sentient deaths confirmed. Conclusion reached. This species group is too violent to exist. Initiating purge protocol, all sentient life in this sector will be sterilized. This is mercy. Countdown beginning. Galactic cleansing commences in 5 minutes. Every being in both fleets felt terror grip their hearts. They had been so focused on each other that they never considered what might be watching from the dark. The first ones who seeded the galaxy with life 2 billion years ago had left a failsafe. If their children grew too violent, the forge would end them cleanly. Now that ancient judgment had arrived, and no one knew how to stop it. Reeves stared at the massive structure and felt time running out. His mission to end one war had just become a mission to prevent galactic genocide. Hayes looked at him with desperate eyes. Captain, what do we do? Reeves took a deep breath and made a decision that would determine the fate of trillions. Get me a scan of that structure. Find me a way inside. We have 5 minutes to save everyone. Science Officer Park worked frantically analyzing the ancient structure while the countdown ticked away. 4 minutes and 30 seconds remained before purge protocols activated. Her fingers flew across controls, pulling every piece of data the sensors could gather. The forge was built from materials that predated modern science. Its energy signatures used principles humanity had never encountered. Hayes stood behind her watching the clock. Anything useful, Park? She shook her head without looking up. Captain, this technology is beyond anything in our databases. We could destroy it with enough firepower, but the explosion would vaporize everything within 100,000 kilometers. That includes both fleets. Reeves gripped his command chair. So we have no way to stop it. Park suddenly sat up straight. Wait, I'm detecting a control center inside the structure. If someone could board it, they might be able to deactivate the purge sequence manually. Hayes ran calculations quickly. The hull is 600 meters of unknown alloy. Our molecular disassemblers would take 20 minutes to cut through. We have 4 minutes. Reeves felt hope dying until Ralph's voice suddenly came through communications. Human captain, there is another way, the entrance, Fren added with surprise in her voice. You know where it is. Ralph explained quickly. My people have studied the ancient legends for 200,000 years. There is a docking port on the lower hemisphere, but it requires a biological key. The forge will only open for genetic material from a species that has never engaged in warfare. Silence filled every channel as the implications sank in. Every species in both fleets had fought wars. The remnant had fought. Everyone had blood on their hands except one. Wilson spoke quietly from his station. Captain, humanity has never fought a galactic war. Reeves understood immediately. We have fought each other plenty on Earth. Park shook her head. But never another species. All of Earth's conflicts were internal. We have never attacked aliens. Hayes looked at Reeves with growing realization. Sir, we might be the key. Humanity might be the only species here that qualifies. Reeves made his decision in seconds. Hayes, you have command. I am taking a shuttle to that docking port. Hayes started to protest. Captain, regulations require that you remain on the ship during combat situations. Reeves was already moving toward the shuttle bay. We do not have time for regulations. If I am wrong about this, you will need to get everyone as far away as possible before the purge begins. That is an order. The small shuttle launched from the Determination and accelerated toward the forge. Reeves piloted it alone because he would not risk anyone else. The ancient structure's weapons tracked his approach but held fire. He searched the lower hemisphere using sensors until he found what Ralph described. A hexagonal opening surrounded by symbols in a language dead for 2 billion years. He brought the shuttle to a gentle stop directly in front of it. A scanning beam emerged from the port and washed over the shuttle. Reeves felt it analyzing every molecule of his body. The beam was thorough, examining his DNA, his cellular structure, his genetic history. Long seconds passed while ancient computers compared his biology to criteria set eons ago. Then the scan completed and a new voice spoke. It was less hostile than the countdown warnings, but still carried immense weight. Genetic analysis complete. Species designation unknown, searching database. No match found, analyzing warfare history embedded in genetic markers. Result, internal. Conflict only. External aggression, 0 instances detected. Classification, immature but peaceful. Access granted to species human. The hexagonal port opened smoothly, revealing a docking tunnel beyond. Reeves exhaled with relief and guided his shuttle inside. The interior was massive beyond comprehension. Reeves walked through corridors lit by blue light that had been burning for 2 billion years. The walls displayed star maps showing every system in the galaxy. Red markers indicated active wars, and there were thousands of them. The scar was just one of many conflicts raging across the stars. In the center of the main chamber stood a control pedestal designed to accommodate multiple species types. Holographic displays floated around the pedestal showing the countdown. 2 minutes and 47 seconds remained. Reeves approached carefully and touched the controls. They responded to his presence and a holographic figure materialized. It was humanoid in basic shape, but clearly alien. The features were strange and ancient beyond measure. When it spoke, the voice was the same one that had granted him access. I am the custodian, the final guardian of the first one's purpose. You are the first to enter this sanctum in 700,000 years. Reeves wasted no time on pleasantries. You need to stop the purge. Those people out there can change. The custodian tilted its head, studying him. When the first ones seeded this galaxy with life, they hoped their children would grow wise and peaceful. Instead, you grew violent. For 2 billion years, I have watched species destroy each other. The first ones programmed me with one final solution. If warfare reaches critical mass, I must end it by ending you. Reeves felt anger rising. That is genocide. How is that better than what we have done? The hologram showed no emotion. It is mercy. The pain stops. The killing ends. The galaxy can start fresh. Reeves stepped closer. Or species can learn, we can change and grow. You are talking about killing 42 trillion beings who had no choice about being born into this war. The custodian remained unmoved. In 2 billion years, no species has chosen peace over victory. War is your nature. Why would you be different? Reeves searched for arguments that would reach an artificial mind created before his species even existed. Because I am here. I am standing in front of you trying to save people who were killing each other 5 minutes ago. Humanity watched this war for 200 years and we did not join in. We did not take sides or try to profit. We came to stop it. The countdown continued ticking, 1 minute and 18 seconds. The custodian processed his words. One species, one anomaly, insufficient data to change 2 billion years of observation. Reeves felt desperation growing. Then give us a chance to prove it is not an anomaly. Give the galaxy a chance to be better. The hologram studied him silently. You risk your life for strangers. This is unusual behavior. Most species value their own survival above all else. Reeves spoke from the heart. It is called compassion. Maybe the first ones had it too, or they would not have seeded the galaxy with life in the first place. They hoped we would be better. Let us try. The custodian paused for several long seconds processing this logic. The countdown reached 1 minute exactly. Interesting argument. The first one's final directive does allow for one alternative to purging. If a species can demonstrate genuine change, the forge will stand down. You have 47 seconds. Make them chained. Reeves immediately opened communications to both fleets. His voice was urgent and desperate. Ralph, Fren, I need you both to do something right now and I need you to mean it. Both commanders responded instantly. What do you need? Reeves looked at the countdown. Apologize to each other, really mean it. You have 45 seconds or everyone dies, including me. Ralph's voice came back angry. Apologize to them? They have slaughtered billions of my people over 700,000 years. Fren shouted back. We slaughtered, you fired the first shot that started this entire war. Reeves cut them both off. Actually, neither of you knows who fired first. That is the point. Stop the cycle, right now. 30 seconds remain. The custodian watched the exchange with interest. Reeves pleaded into the communications. I am about to die because of your pride. Millions of beings in both fleets are about to die. The remnant who finally found hope are about to die, all because you cannot say 2 words. 20 seconds. Both commanders remained silent. Reeves could see their faces on his display. Both struggled internally between pride and survival. At 18 seconds, Petra's voice came through from the remnant fleet. Just say you are sorry. Is your pride worth everyone's life? I have already lost everything once. I do not want to lose everything again. Grimm added his voice. I spent 40 years hating them. I let it go in 5 minutes. You can too. 12 seconds remained. Hayes aboard the Determination whispered. Come on, please. Park had tears streaming down her face. Wilson held a photo of his family. 8 seconds. Finally, Fren spoke and her voice shook. Ralph, I do not know if I can erase 700,000 years in seconds, but I am sorry, truly sorry, for all the terrible things the collective has done, for what I have ordered done. I am tired of the killing and I just want it to stop. 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Ralph's face showed pain accumulated over millennia. My grandfather fought this war, his grandfather before him, back 30,000 generations. I do not know how to not hate you, but I do not want to die hating. 2 seconds, 1 second. I am sorry too, for all of it, for everything. 0 seconds. The weapons remained charged. Everyone held their breath. The custodian analyzed both commanders using sensors that could read pheromones, brain patterns, and micro-expressions across light years. Analysis complete. Emotional authenticity detected at 94.7% accuracy. Both subjects display genuine remorse, fear, and hope. The first one's alternative condition has been met. Purge protocol canceled. The weapons powered down. Cheering erupted across 75,000 ships. Relief swept through both fleets like a wave. Soldiers who had accepted death moments ago now laughed and cried and held each other. Ralph collapsed back in his command chair, feeling centuries of tension drain from his body. Fren covered her face with her crystalline hands and wept for the first time in 3,000 years. The forge's weapons remained silent, and the ancient countdown displays went dark. Reeves leaned against the control pedestal, breathing heavily. His hands shook from adrenaline and fear. He had gambled everything on the hope that 2 ancient enemies could find compassion in their hearts. Somehow it had worked. The custodian observed him with something that might have been approval. Captain Reeves of humanity, you have demonstrated a quality the first ones hoped all species would develop. You risked everything to save those who had done nothing for you. The holographic guardian gestured, and a crystal matrix rose. From the pedestal, it glowed with inner light that seemed to contain entire universes. The Forge will remain active as a neutral arbiter should you need it in the future, but I offer you something more. This is the first one's archive, 2 billion years of accumulated knowledge, technology that can reshape matter itself, philosophy that can guide civilizations, art that captures the beauty of 1,000 extinct species, science that unlocks the deepest secrets of reality. The first ones left it for whoever proved worthy. Humanity has proven worthy. Reeves stared at the crystal in shock. The knowledge contained within could advance humanity by millions of years. It would make them the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, yet something about accepting it alone felt wrong. I cannot take this. It is too much for one species. The custodian tilted its head. Then what would you do with it? Reeves thought carefully before answering. Share it with everyone. That is what the first ones would have wanted, is it not? For all their children to benefit. The custodian was silent for a long moment, processing this response. In 2 billion years, no one has made that choice. Power is usually hoarded, not shared. You continue to surprise me, Captain. Very well. The archive will be open to all species who prove they can use knowledge responsibly. You will be its first guardian. The crystal shrank and flew into Reeves' hand. It felt warm and alive somehow. He returned to his shuttle and flew back to the Determination. As he traveled, he opened communications to all ships. The immediate crisis is over. The Forge will not destroy you. But that does not mean the work is done. You still need to talk. You still need to make real peace. The meeting station is still waiting. Will you use it? Both commanders responded almost simultaneously. Ralph spoke first. Captain Reeves, you said humanity documented war crimes from both sides. We need to see it. We need to know the truth of what we have done. Fren agreed. If we are going to stop fighting, we need to understand what we are stopping. Reeves hesitated. Are you sure it will not be pleasant to watch? Ralph's voice was firm. We are sure we cannot move forward while hiding from the past. Reeves transmitted compressed data files to both flagships, 200 years of observation, video records, testimony from dying species, documented atrocities. Unvarnished truth of 700,000 years. An hour passed in heavy silence as commanders and their staffs reviewed the records. The crimes were worse than either side had admitted to themselves. Civilian populations targeted deliberately. Entire species driven to extinction for strategic advantage. Prisoners tortured for information that was never used. Colonies bombed into radioactive wastelands. The list went on until it became numbing. Ralph finally broke the silence, broadcasting to his entire fleet. I have reviewed 3,000 years of recent records. We have committed atrocities I did not know about, things I do not want to believe we are capable of. If this is what we have become, then we need to change. We need to be better. Fren echoed his words. I authorized strikes on civilian targets. I told myself it was necessary to win. Seeing it from outside, from a neutral perspective, there was no necessity. Only cruelty and fear. Across both fleets, other officers began speaking up. Admissions of doubt, stories of orders that felt wrong, questions that had been silenced by military discipline. The dam of 700,000 years was breaking, and truth flooded through the cracks. Small transport ships began moving toward the meeting station that hung in space between the fleets. Ralph and Fren boarded vessels simultaneously and traveled to neutral ground. The station was simple in design, a circular room with a round table, no weapons allowed, no guards permitted, just two ancient enemies meeting face to face for the first time in 3,000 years. They entered through opposite doors and stopped on opposite sides of the table. Neither wanted to sit first because sitting was a position of vulnerability. Finally, both sat at exactly the same moment. Awkward silence filled the room. These two had fought each other for millennia. They had killed each other's friends and destroyed each other's worlds. Now they sat across a table with nothing but empty air between them. Reeves watched from the Determination and whispered to Hayes. They are at the table. That is more than anyone has achieved in 700,000 years. Hayes asked quietly. What happens now? Reeves smiled slightly. Now comes the hard part. They have to talk. At the station, Ralph spoke first. His voice was uncertain. I do not know where to begin. We cannot undo 700,000 years. Fren nodded slowly. No, we cannot, but maybe we can stop adding more years to it. Ralph considered this. Ceasefire first, then we figure out the rest, one step at a time. Fren agreed. One step at a time. Both reached across the table slowly. Their hands met in the middle. The handshake was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Soldiers watched their leaders touch without weapons and felt something they had not felt in generations. Hope. The moment was beautiful and fragile. Then alarms screamed across every sensor system simultaneously. Wilson shouted from his station. Captain, multiple faster-than-light signatures incoming. Dozens of them, hundreds. Park's fingers flew across her controls. It is not 2 fleets, sir. It is 20 fleets. Ships are dropping out of hyperspace from every direction. On the screens, vessels began appearing. Different designs, different technologies, different species from across the galaxy. Hayes analyzed the signatures quickly. Sir, these are other galactic powers. They must have detected the energy surge when the forge activated. More ships kept arriving. Within minutes, 200,000 vessels crowded the space around the Scar. Reeves recognized some of the configurations. The Hegemony, the Federation, the Unity, the Concordat. Every major civilization in this spiral arm had sent their war fleets. An incoming transmission arrived on all frequencies. The voice was harsh and suspicious. This is Admiral Soren of the Hegemony Warfleet. We detected activation of the first one's weapon. All vessels stand down immediately or be destroyed. We will not allow anyone to control the forge. Other voices joined in making similar demands. Accusations flew between different powers. Ancient rivalries surfaced. Territorial disputes erupted into shouting matches. Hayes looked at the tactical display with growing horror. Captain, this is about to become a galactic war. Every major power is here. All of them are armed, all of them are scared. One shot fired and everyone starts shooting. Park added grimly. Current count is 247,000 ships and still climbing. If they all open fire, nothing will survive. Not us, not the fleets, not even the forge. Reeves rubbed his face tiredly. They had just stopped one war, and now an even bigger one was about to begin. Every civilization in the region had arrived, terrified that someone else would seize the ultimate. Weapon, fear, and suspicion poisoned every communication channel. Old hatreds bubbled to the surface. The powder keg was set and the fuse was lit. A warning shot suddenly flashed across space. One nervous captain had fired at another fleet, targeting systems across 247,000 ships locked on to perceived threats. The galaxy stood on the edge of total war. Reeves had seconds to prevent the largest battle in galactic history. He opened communications broadcasting to every ship simultaneously. This is Captain Reeves of Humanity. Everyone stops right now. Soren's voice cut him off. Humanity, never heard of you. Stand aside or be destroyed with the others. Multiple fleets started demanding that the determination move or face annihilation. Weapons charged, shields strengthened. Battle was 3 seconds away. Reeves made a decision. Hayes put us between as many fleets as possible, defensive positions. We protect anyone who does not want to fight. Hayes stared at him. Sir, we are one ship. They are 247,000. We cannot stop this. Reeves looked at his crew. Park was scared but determined. Wilson held his family photo like a prayer. Hayes was ready to follow orders even if they were impossible. Reeves felt pride in all of them. Maybe we cannot stop it, but we have to try. If we do nothing, then everything we accomplished today means nothing. The determination moved into position between multiple fleet groups. One small ship trying to prevent galactic war. Soren laughed harshly. One vessel? You are insane. Reeves responded calmly. Probably, but before you start shooting, let me show you what happened to the last people who thought that. He transmitted footage of the earlier battle. The Ascendancy cruiser vanishing in an instant. 75,000 ships disabled simultaneously. Weapons reflected back at the remnant fleet. Silence fell across the communication channels as commanders watched the recordings. The laughter stopped. The mockery died. Every tactical officer in every fleet suddenly realized that the small, unknown vessel was more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. Reeves spoke into the shocked quiet. You have seen what we can do, but that is not why you should listen. You should listen because for the first time in 700,000 years peace is actually possible. The gathered fleets processed what they had. Witnessed 247,000 ships filled with commanders who suddenly questioned their tactical assessments. That one small vessel had capabilities that defied everything they knew about warfare. Reeves continued speaking before anyone could recover from the shock. Ralph and Friend just shook hands. Their 700,000-year war is ending. The forge has powered down. No one is getting sterilized today, and humanity is offering something better than violence. He transmitted coordinates to every ship simultaneously. These coordinates lead to our home system. We are 3 years old in galactic terms, new to faster-than-light travel, untouched by your conflicts and politics. We are offering to host a galactic summit. All species welcome. Every civilization gets an equal voice regardless of size or power. We will share the first one's archive with everyone who comes in peace. The offer hung in space like a challenge. Soren was first to respond. His voice carried deep suspicion. Why would you do this? What advantage does humanity gain? Reeves answered honestly. Peace, survival, a galaxy where we are not all trying to kill each other. Humanity has been watching you for 200 years. We have seen what endless war does to civilizations. We almost destroyed ourselves in nuclear fire 300 years ago. We do not want to watch you make the same mistakes. Another commander from a different fleet asked the question many were thinking. And if we refuse your generous offer? Reeves took a deep breath before answering. Then we seal our borders and you will never hear from us again. We will watch from a distance as you continue destroying each other. But you will have lost the chance to learn from 2 billion years of accumulated wisdom. Your choice. Arguments erupted across multiple communication channels simultaneously. Some civilizations saw opportunity. Others smelled traps. Military commanders did not want to surrender strategic advantage. Civilian leaders were exhausted from generations of war. Species that had been enemies for millennia shouted at each other about whose fault various conflicts were. The chaos threatened to reignite violence at any moment. Ralph's voice suddenly cut through the noise. He broadcast from the peace station where he still sat across from Fren. I was like you 1 hour ago, absolutely certain I was right, convinced my enemies were monsters. Then I saw recorded evidence of what my own people had done, what I had personally ordered done. The truth destroyed my certainty. He paused, and when he continued, his voice shook with emotion. If my enemy can change, if I can change, then anyone can change. At least come and listen. What harm is there in listening? Fren added her support. We have fought each other since before most of your civilizations existed. If we can sit at a table together, then anything is possible. Humanity earned the right to speak by saving all of our lives. Give them a chance. The arguments continued, but with less hostility now. The sight of ancient enemies working together was powerful. It made the impossible seem possible. Grimm spoke up, representing the remnant. Humanity offered us sanctuary with no conditions, 12 worlds to rebuild our lives. They kept their word and asked nothing in return. Maybe they actually mean what they say. Petra's voice joined his. We are going to their summit. We are tired of fighting just to survive. We want to live instead. One by one, smaller civilizations began agreeing. Species that had been caught between larger powers for centuries saw opportunity for their voices to finally matter. The major powers remained hesitant. They had the most to lose by giving up military dominance. Soren spoke for many when he said, You ask us to trust strangers, to gamble our security on the word of an unknown species. Reeves responded carefully. No, I ask you to trust yourselves to make good choices, come to the summit or stay away, but stop pointing weapons at each other over fear and suspicion. The custodian's voice suddenly joined the conversation. The ancient guardian had been silent until now. This one speaks truth. The first ones would approve of this path. I will attend this summit as neutral observer. My presence ensures no species can dominate others. That declaration shifted the balance completely. If the Forge itself endorsed humanity's plan, then refusing became difficult to justify. Soren consulted with his superiors for several minutes, then finally relented. Fine, the hegemony will send representatives to this summit, but if this proves to be a trap, there will be consequences. Reeves smiled slightly. It is not a trap. You have my word. Other civilizations followed the hegemony's lead. Within an hour, 847 different species agreed to send delegates to human space. Earth orbit would soon become the most crowded location in galactic history. Reeves coordinated with his superiors back home who scrambled to prepare for the arrival of nearly 1,000 different civilizations. Diplomatic protocols had to be established, translation systems tested, security measures implemented, housing arranged. It was organized chaos. The immediate crisis was over, but the hard work was just beginning. Ralph and Fren remained at the peace station working together to draft the framework for a ceasefire agreement between their empires. They argued frequently because 700,000 years of hatred did not vanish overnight. But they kept arguing instead of shooting, and that was progress. Other species began joining them to contribute ideas about peacekeeping and conflict resolution. The remnant fleet accepted human escorts to begin their journey to the promised sanctuary worlds. Grimm remained skeptical but hopeful. Petra organized the various displaced species into groups based on environmental needs. Children who had been born in the cold of space would finally have worlds to call home. The elderly would spend their final years on solid ground instead of rusted ships. Back on the Determination, Reeves and his crew began preparations for the long journey home. They had left Earth 3 months ago on what was supposed to be a simple first contact mission. Instead, they had stopped a war that predated human civilization. Hayes approached the captain with a data pad. "Sir, Earth Command is asking for a full report. They want to know how we ended up in the middle of galactic politics." Reeves laughed tiredly. "Tell them we improvised, constantly." Park joined them looking exhausted but happy. "Captain, the preliminary sensor data from the Forge is incredible. The technology in that archive will take us centuries to fully understand." Wilson added quietly, "My daughter asked if I met any aliens. I told her I met 247 different species. She thinks I am making it up." 6 weeks passed while humanity prepared to host the galaxy. Earth orbit transformed into a massive diplomatic hub. Stations were built to accommodate species with different environmental needs. Translation algorithms were refined to handle languages that used colors, pheromones, and magnetic fields to communicate. Security forces from multiple species worked together to ensure no violence erupted from old grudges. The first Galactic Congress in history convened in a massive station built specifically for the purpose. 847 species sent representatives. Some sent scientists. Others sent diplomats. A few sent military observers who still did not trust the process. The chamber was designed so no species had a position of advantage. Every delegate had equal space and equal access to communication systems. Arguments were fierce from the beginning. Territorial disputes that had simmered for millennia erupted into shouting matches. Trade disagreements threatened to derail entire sessions. Ancient grudges poisoned negotiations. But despite all the conflict, not a single shot was fired. Not a single ship attacked another. The arguing continued, but it was contained within words instead of weapons. Ralph and Fren found themselves working as co-chairs of the Peacekeeping Committee. Neither had imagined such a thing possible 6 weeks ago. They still disagreed on most issues, but they had learned to disagree productively. Their fleets were being slowly repurposed for exploration and disaster relief. Weapons systems were being retrofitted into terraforming equipment and asteroid mining tools. The transition was difficult, but both commanders were committed to seeing it through. The custodian attended every session sitting in silent observation. Its presence reminded everyone that the first ones were still watching in a sense. That ancient judgment could return if the galaxy returned to its violent ways. The threat was never spoken aloud, but everyone understood it. Reeves delivered progress reports to the Congress regularly. He walked through halls filled with beings from hundreds of worlds talking, negotiating, and cooperating. It was chaotic and messy and beautiful. Soren approached him one day looking uncomfortable. "Captain, I owe you an apology. When you faced my fleet, I called you insane for thinking one ship could make a difference." Reeves smiled and shook his head. "I was insane, but sometimes insanity is the only rational response to an insane situation." Soren actually laughed. "How did you know it would work? How did you know we would listen?" Reeves looked around at the gathered species. I did not know, I just knew that doing nothing was worse than trying and failing. Someone had to take the first step. It might as well be us. 1 year after the 50-minute intervention that changed galactic history, the changes were visible everywhere. The Galactic Congress had become permanent with a rotating leadership structure that gave every species equal opportunity to guide discussions. What started as a desperate peace conference had evolved into actual governance. Not a government exactly, because no one wanted to surrender sovereignty. More like a forum where problems could be solved with words instead of weapons. Ralph no longer commanded war fleets. His title changed to Coordinator of Relief Operations. The Ascendancy's massive industrial capacity that once built weapons of destruction now manufactured emergency shelters, medical supplies, and food synthesizers. When a colony on the far rim suffered an asteroid impact, Ralph's ships were first to arrive with aid. Fren worked alongside him, managing logistics and coordination between different species' relief efforts. Their friendship surprised everyone, including themselves. 700,000 years of hatred did not disappear, but it was being slowly replaced by something neither expected. Respect, trust, even affection in the way soldiers who survived war together develop bonds. They still argued constantly about everything from resource allocation to philosophical questions, but the arguments no longer involved weapons. The remnant thrived in their new homes. Grimm transformed from warlord to mayor of the largest settlement on the third sanctuary world. Petra served as ambassador to the Galactic Congress representing displaced species. Children who grew up expecting to die young in the cold of space now attended schools and played in sunlight. The elderly planted gardens knowing they would live to see them mature. It was not perfect, but it was peace. The First One's archive was slowly being shared under strict protocols. The custodian insisted that knowledge be distributed carefully because technology without wisdom caused destruction. Research coalitions formed where former enemies worked side by side, studying principles that seemed like magic. Medical breakthroughs cured diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia. Agricultural techniques allowed barren worlds to bloom. Energy systems provided unlimited clean power. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Military commanders who built careers on war resented their reduced roles. Corporations that profited from conflict lobbied against peace initiatives. Extremist groups from various species tried to restart old conflicts through terrorism and sabotage. The Congress created peacekeeping forces drawn from multiple civilizations to handle security threats. It was imperfect, but better than war. Earth itself transformed under the weight of galactic attention. What was once an isolated backwater became the diplomatic center of civilized space. Cities grew to accommodate embassies from hundreds of species. Human culture began blending with alien traditions, creating fusion art, music, and cuisine that belonged to no single world. Young humans grew up with alien friends and thought nothing strange about it. The determination remained in service, but its role changed. Instead of intervention, the ship performed exploration duties, mapping unknown regions. Captain Reeves received promotion offers repeatedly, but turned them all down. He preferred his ship and crew to administrative positions. Hayes eventually accepted command of a new vessel and departed with Reeves' blessing. Park became head of xenoscience research, studying the archive. Wilson retired to spend time with his growing family. On the anniversary of their intervention, Reeves returned to the Scar to visit the forge. The debris field had been cleared, and the ancient structure now served as neutral meeting ground for sensitive negotiations. Species that still did not fully trust each other could meet under the custodian's watchful presence, knowing violence was impossible. The Guardian had proven surprisingly adaptable to its new role as arbitrator. Reeves entered the same chamber where he had gambled everything on two enemies finding compassion. The custodian materialized looking exactly as it had 1 year prior. "Captain Reeves, you returned to the place where everything changed." Reeves nodded, walking to the control pedestal. "I wanted to see how you were doing. Is this what the First Ones intended, this messy, complicated piece we are building?" The ancient intelligence considered the question carefully. The first ones left limited guidance about their specific intentions. They hoped their children would be wise. They provided tools and knowledge. The rest was left to choice. It gestured, and holographic displays showed the galaxy. Red markers indicating active wars had decreased by 40%. In 1 year, you have accomplished what seemed impossible. Conflicts that raged for millennia are being resolved through negotiation. It is imperfect and fragile, but it exists. Reeves studied the displays. There were still thousands of active conflicts. Species that had not attended the Congress continued fighting. Some civilizations rejected peace overtures. Pirates and criminals exploited the transition period. We have so far to go still. Sometimes I wonder if we just delayed the inevitable. The custodian tilted its head in that characteristic gesture. Perhaps, but you gave them a chance. That is more than they had before you arrived. The Guardian pulled up footage from the day everything changed. 75,000 ships frozen in helpless fear while the purge countdown ticked away. Ralph and Fren apologizing to each other with seconds remaining, the handshake that symbolized hope. You risked everything on belief that beings could be better than their worst moments. The first ones would be proud. Reeves watched the footage and saw his younger self gambling that compassion existed even in hearts hardened by endless war. I was terrified. Every choice felt impossible. If I guessed wrong, billions died. The custodian nodded. That is leadership. Choosing when there are no good options, only less terrible ones. You chose well, Captain. They stood together in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Reeves asked the question that had bothered him for months. Will the peace last, or will they eventually return to old patterns? The custodian showed what might have been a smile, though its face was not quite human. Unknown. Free will means futures are not predetermined. They could slide back into war, or they could build something better. Your species gave them the choice. What they do with it is their responsibility now. Reeves left the forge feeling oddly lighter. He had carried guilt about all the things that could have gone wrong, all the ways his plan could have failed. But the custodian was right. He had given them a chance. The rest was up to them. He returned to his shuttle and flew back toward human space, where the Congress was debating new agricultural treaties. The journey took several days, and Reeves spent the time reviewing reports. Small conflicts were being resolved through mediation. Trade agreements were forming between former enemies. Cultural exchanges were happening naturally as species learned about each other. A coalition of scientists from 20 civilizations had just published breakthrough research on renewable energy. It was slow progress, but it was progress. On approach to Earth, Reeves received a priority message. Ralph and Fren wanted to meet him urgently. He diverted to their location, wondering what crisis had emerged now. He found them aboard a joint research vessel studying the remains of an ancient battlefield. Both looked tired but excited. Fren spoke first. Captain, we found something you need to see. They led him to a laboratory where technicians were analyzing artifacts recovered from the debris field. Ralph explained, We have been cataloging battle sites from the war, trying to understand what was destroyed and what might be recovered. We found this in the oldest debris field we could locate. It predates the war by 10,000 years. He activated a holographic display showing text in multiple languages, including one Reeves recognized. Is that human writing? Fren nodded. Ancient Earth languages mixed with our oldest records and a dozen other species' proto-languages. This artifact is from a diplomatic mission that happened before any of our civilizations achieved space flight. The first ones were not the only ones who seeded this galaxy. There was another group, one that believed in teaching rather than just hoping. Reeves studied the text carefully. It described a philosophy of cooperation and shared growth, of species helping each other reach their potential, of choosing harmony over dominance. You think this influenced our development, that we are what we are because someone taught our ancestors? Ralph shrugged. Perhaps, or perhaps your species was always inclined this way and the teaching simply reinforced it. Either way, it explains much. The discovery sparked new research initiatives. Archaeological teams from multiple species began studying pre-spaceflight history, searching for evidence of outside contact. Philosophers debated whether knowing about external influence changed anything about their choices. Religious leaders incorporated new understanding into their teachings. The galaxy learned that it was part of a much longer story than anyone had realized. The determination eventually returned to regular exploration duties. Reeves and his crew mapped systems no one had visited in millions of years. They made first contact with isolated civilizations and helped them integrate into the wider galactic community if they chose. Each mission was unique. Each presented its own challenges, but none matched the intensity of that day when everything hung on 50 minutes and two enemies saying sorry. Years passed and the peace matured. The generation born after the war knew violence only as history. They grew up learning multiple languages and studying alien cultures as naturally as their own. Humans and non-humans worked side by side on projects that benefited everyone. The galaxy was not perfect. Conflicts still erupted. Criminals still caused problems. Accidents still happened. But war no longer defined existence. Reeves eventually retired from active service but remained involved as an advisor. He taught at the academy, training new captains in the principles of peaceful intervention. His lectures always emphasized one point: you cannot force peace on others, but you can create conditions where peace becomes possible. You can show people there are alternatives to violence. The rest is their choice. On the 50th anniversary of the intervention, the Galactic Congress erected a monument in Earth orbit. A simple design showing 50 different species standing together in a circle. No species at the center. No hierarchy of importance, just cooperation and shared purpose. The inscription read simply, 50 minutes to end a war, a lifetime to build a peace. Reeves attended the dedication ceremony along with Ralph, Fren, Grimm, Petra, and thousands of others who had been present that day. They were older now. Some had retired. Others had died and were represented by family members, but the memory remained vivid, the terror, the hope, the impossible becoming possible because someone chose to try. As the ceremony concluded, Reeves looked out at Earth surrounded by ships from hundreds of worlds. He thought about the small vessel that had positioned itself between armies and demanded they be better. He thought about Hayes and Park and Wilson who trusted him when his plan sounded insane. He thought about Ralph and Fren who found the courage to apologize. He thought about Grimm who chose peace over revenge. All the small choices that added up to something greater. The galaxy was not perfect and never would be, but it was better, and sometimes better was enough.